Hey guys, back with another episode with Mr. Todd Fox of Tour Protection. You like things, so in your jiu-jitsu, you talked with us in one of the recent podcasts about digging techniques that are repeatable and easy, like less steps, so that you can go A plus B equals C instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and all of these things that can get mucked up. This is kind of one of those things.
It is.
Bad. Baseline, anomaly, decision.
B plus A equals D is the algorithm from the Marine Corps Combat Hunter program, which is baseline. And the baseline is normalcy, whatever's normal in an environment. The people that should be there, the activities they're doing, the clothing they're wearing, the lighting, the whatever definable data point that you can collect. What is normal in that environment? The whole reason to establish what is normal is to be able to identify what's not normal, some deviation from the norm in the environment, which is an anomaly. So in the Marine Corps, they say, if you have baseline plus an anomaly, you have to make a decision. They cluster it in threes. We don't do that.
So they say you got to have 3 anomalies before you get to decision making?
Yeah, so basically I would have normalcy, which is our baseline, and then on that baseline, all of a sudden I have an anomaly. And then if it flattens back out and it keeps going straight, this isn't necessarily enough to act. But when they're clustered in threes,
that's like
3 different anomalies with 3 different data points.
So this could be baseline, all's quiet at home. Dog starts barking. Motion sensor goes off. Trash can sounds gets kicked over or something. Now I better do something.
Exactly that.
And it's a raccoon out there. No
exactly that. Yeah, and so those are all positive anomalies. So when you have the baseline of normalcy, when you have a spike above, meaning something's added to the environment, that's a plus or an addition to, right? Or you can have these types of anomaly. This is below the baseline, and so this is a minus anomaly. And what that means is normally Mickey's standing here. Normally there's a pallet table here. Normally Drew is filming. And now none of that is the case. So those are anomalies below the baseline. So we have above.
The horses aren't in the pasture. The front door is wide open. There's something that's not supposed to be there.
Yes, correct. So this is the addition. This is the removal
Something that's supposed to be there that no longer is. Normally I'd come home and my dog would be barking in the driveway waiting for me. He's not here. What's going on?
My neighbor is always outside at this time of day, sitting on the porch drinking a beer, and he's not here. Now, here's the thing. Those anomalies, whether they're an addition to the environment, people that shouldn't be there or aren't normally there, people that should be there that aren't there, they come in 2 formats, critical and benign. And so what that basically is this thing happened, it's removed from the environment, but it's because there was an issue at school and you had to go pick up your kid. That's an anomaly, but it's a benign anomaly. It's not really an anomaly that's gonna hurt us or that we're gonna worry about. Then we have the ones that we do worry about, which are the critical ones, right? Those are the things that we're after. We're trying to figure out which anomaly is critical, and then we come up with decision, right? And the decision typically comes into 3 formats. The 3 C's for us, and this is a little deviation from the Combat Hunter program, are C, continue. So we say we have an anomaly, but we think we're capable of addressing that problem ourselves. Or the situation, the mission, our job, our function is so critical and important that we're going to do whatever it takes to win this particular fight, to drive on, to continue as planned, right? So continue as planned is number 1. Number 2 is we're going to change. We see this anomaly and we say, we're not really prepared to handle this in this moment, in this situation. So instead of addressing it head on, I'm going to go outside the house, around the corner, get my guns, my knife, whatever I got, and then I'm going to re-enter from a different position, or I'm going to get my neighbor who's trained and skilled and who I've worked with before and bring them into the fold. That would be a change. Or I'm going to change my route, or I'm going to change my movement, or whatever I'm going to do. A change. And the last one is cancel. So you pull chalks. I see this thing happen, like GTFO, we're out of here, we're leaving, we're not coming back. That's it, we're done.
The reason that we wanted to share this with you, we get the constant questions of, what do I pay attention to? So we'll go back a second. We talk about awareness. I got to pay attention. And you can lose your mind trying to pay attention to every, we heard a noise earlier. What was it? It was the jukebox, right? It was a little thing, and you start paying attention to every movement, every noise. It's impossible for us to do that. To be successful, you got to figure out what doesn't belong there. And that's That's really the trick, I think, but that requires you guys to develop the baseline in your neighborhood, your home, your office, your church, whatever.
Wherever you frequent.
Yeah, what doesn't belong here? And then I guess the challenge is when you go somewhere you don't frequent, like go to a restaurant that you've never been to, like the one we were at last night, you've never been there. Sharon smelled smoke. I wasn't concerned. It smelled like kitchen smoke. It smelled like somebody had heated the kitchen up too much or heated the cooktop up. But you're at a place where maybe you're there every day and it's like, you're always got that fryer, up too hot. That's normal. But the one day you're at a place you've never been and it really is a fire. So what do you deal,
That's another conversation too, and that's a good point. That's called normalcy bias, when I expect that things are just going to occur as they've always occurred. And that's a potential problem, because if we go into a zone that has a lot of issues, but I've never had issues, I assume I'm never going to have issues, which is a default for most humans, and that's just not the case, right? September 10th, 2001, no planes, right? September 11th, things change, everything changes. So with this, relative to your point, there are a lot of data points, there are a lot of pieces of information for me to take in through my senses, right? I see stuff, I hear stuff, I feel stuff. One thing is that there are certain things that, again, are going to be critical and certain things that aren't. But when I start seeing something that can affect my livelihood or my friends or my family or somebody like that, that for me requires a decision, a change, a modification. And sometimes it's just moving where I'm at, right? Some minor modification. I heard something or I saw something, like in your case, what you noted, something's over there. I heard it, I turned, I looked, and you said, what is that? And you went to investigate, right? You went to look at it to see further. Normally, that's what we do. We start to say, okay, well, there's some anomalies. This requires further attention. I need to hone in on that thing so I can determine if it's benign or critical. And that's normally how you filter through all of these things, in addition to obviously going to these environments. One of the things we talked about before is when you have access to, like foreign travel, for example, you have access to a local national who can identify the baseline of normalcy for you. That's always a key force multiplier. I always want that in any environment. I want to know if I'm in your place of business, you know what's normal, I'm deferring to you. Something happens, I look, but then I automatically look at you because you know if that's normal or if that's not normal. And when you went to investigate, you knew what you were looking at. I wouldn't have known what I was looking at. So I always try to bring in, if I'm in a foreign country, a local national, or if I'm here in this area, a guy who knows the area, what normal behavior is, how things function. That's where we get really strong when otherwise we would be weak.
What do you think about the role of intuition? I don't know what's normal, but I don't feel good about this, and I'm just going to get
Trust your gut. Trust your gut. I think it's rarely wrong, right? You feel stuff because you're seeing and taking in things that you can't process, you're not aware of. And your brain is processing it for you, and you're feeling it in your gut because something's happening.
Go.
My suggestion is always to trust your gut on that. And a lot of things happen and have happened to me that I can't particularly articulate why or how, but it doesn't feel right. And just because I can't put words to it or I can't explain it to you doesn't mean it's
not real.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's not just some crazy perception. I'm perceiving it, but I'm perceiving it because it's coming through my eyes
deep
and
level.
ears. Absolutely. So for me, trust your gut. Trust your gut. And if you're wrong, you're wrong.
Right.
Right?
The worst thing, you probably left an area that you got to return to later.
Simple.
Yeah. When somebody enters a new space, so I'm going to go to the movie theater like we were talking about during lunch. We're going to go see a movie. I've never been to that theater. We have these things that we perceive to be normal, but I've never been to maybe a theater in a foreign place, or maybe it's not a movie theater. Maybe it's a theater with real live actors. How do I start to develop this baseline visually, audibly? Like, do you walk into a place and post up like, before I begin I must get a baseline? Like what's a good process for a normal?
No, I personally work in security, so what happens is I'm constantly scanning and assessing, and it doesn't take any extra energy. So if we mentioned Cooper the other day, but so it's yellow, I'm in the yellow. It doesn't consume extra energy, my heart rate's not high, I'm not my spidey senses aren't peaked. I'm just walking around, I'm looking, I'm paying attention to what's going on. And I actually do that to pass time too, right? So if I'm in an airport or something else, I'm trying to look and scan and assess, almost like a game, right? Instead of staring at YouTube or instead of staring at Instagram or something like that, I'm looking at people and watching people. And
you learn a lot
Absolutely, I learn a ton, and I try to find out if I'm right, whether I'm talking to a person or I watch where they go and what they do. I'm scanning, assessing that way. So when I come into a room normally, I'm doing that naturally. So I want to know where doors are, I want to know where windows are, because people can come at me that way, but also I can go out that way. So it's a great point to know. But behavior.
So you just brought up part of this baseline is you're also noticing ingress and egress into areas that you've not been in before.
Yeah, so one of the things is that I have to know what potential problems can occur, and then I have to know where they can come from. And while, people can come through the roof or up through the sub or through the floor, it's almost never happening that way. So most of the time they're walking through a door, they're coming through a window, and most of the time when I'm worried about attacks, they're attacking me with their hands or something in their hands, whether it's a gun, a knife, a bat, or whatever. So, I tend to pay attention to doors and windows. I tend to pay attention to hands. I tend to look toward the center of the body and the waistline for printing and things like that.
He's kind of a tummy guy, is what he's saying.
A little bit, just a little. For me, taking in those senses and feeling it, like you're talking about intuition, I feel in that room, like what is the general vibe and then what doesn't fit. And I think I remember 25-ish years ago, guys talking about protective security anomalies, like it's summer and that guy's wearing a trench coat. Well, that doesn't normally happen, but that concept holds true.
It's such a broad jump of what's normal to
and so that would be the first thing you're looking for is the most obvious.
Yeah.
Right? You're not looking for the tiny detail first. When you're just doing a broad general scan of the area, it's what stands out.
So that's a good one, I think, for people to start to develop, because this is a habit that we're talking about. It's not okay, I walked into this space, I went through this process, I'm good. You are developing it as a protocol of life, right?
And it's live and continuous, And so I don't see it to be any different than working out, than training jiu-jitsu, than shooting firearms. Like those things are only maintained so long as you're practicing them, and then you're updating them, those skills. Same thing here, I can come in the room and do a quick assessment, but guess what? Something changed. Something changed in the room and I stopped assessing. Now I'm sitting here as if my assessment lasts forever. So it's a constant evolving thing in any environment.
As we've talked about in most of the videos, a lot of this stuff happens in the brain. It's not a tool, it's not a physical thing that you can buy. It's something that the person has to be consciously adding into the way that their brain and attitude, the way that their attitudes approach life.
Yeah, this is definitely mindset related, and 100% your brain is your primary weapon. It's your most important weapon, and it's where everything starts. Nothing can happen without your brain cycling through it first. You have to have that synapse between neurons firing. If that synapse isn't developed, it's not there, the thing's not happening. Right?
I dig it. Bad. I hope that you've been following this video series, digging it. Todd came up and spent a couple of days filming with us. Tons of good stuff from this guy, years on the road around the world, 148 countries, thousands of cities, 148 countries, many of them multiple times, protecting and serving his clients in those different places. There's tons to learn, and he's passing that on. Check him out, tourprotection.com.
And at Tour Protection on Instagram. Excuse me, at Tour Training.
At Tour Training. Yep, that's it. Google Todd Fox, double D. And share these videos, like them. Look for one of his classes, sign up. Maybe I'll be there too. I'm a student, doing studenting right now. Don't judge. Be well, don't be dickheads.
Best draw it, how to access it, and how to present it to target given all of the environmental challenges.
We'll show you how to avoid the most common mistakes police officers and armed citizens frequently make when either using cover or trying to get to cover.
So what are the best practices, both legally and tactically, to have the best outcome possible?